Alright, so before we begin, I want to test drive a cheeky wee weekend side project where I sort of soften my persona and give a short casual review of what I've been watching, reading and or playing in between my usual schedule. So if that sounds like your thing, let's get into what broke me this week. What I love about Dead Space is that it has a supremely tangible way of motivating you to just get the job done. Don't worry about the fact your bowels and bladder emptied into that saucy spacesuit right after your crewmate got barbarically pierced through the tits. You're now in the bold, batter-worthy shoes of engineer Isaac Clarke, who along with a security crew are sent to investigate a distress signal upon a planet miner called USG Ishimura. Once aboard, Isaac is quickly separated from his team after they're attacked by the grotesquely mutilated remains of the Ishimura's crew known as necromorphs, and begins a quest to repair communications, implement an escape plan, and along the way dismember some tasty limbs with dangerous mining tools without liability insurance. In terms of actual story details, that's all I'm going to give you because I want to keep these shorter videos as spoiler free as possible unless I have something particularly juicy to share, which, to be honest, I don't when it comes to Dead Space. While the lore surrounding a mysterious alien marker that causes psychosis and is worshipped by a hostile cult called the Church of Unitology is fine in its own right, I was personally more compelled in its organic dystopian world building than desperately hunting for the truth behind the madness. After all, it's still ultimately a simple yet remarkably effective tale of survival, where naturally the protagonist's main focus is on escaping this ordeal, thus leaving its answers almost entirely up to the player's own agency to discover for themselves as they explore the ship. While Paul W.S. Anderson's Event Horizon was certainly an unquestionably visceral inspiration, it takes its best storytelling beats from Ridley Scott's Alien, in that the story works better when it's integrated directly into its world and characters than pausing urgency for the sake of a big exposition dump, which Dead Space is guilty of doing in regards to one cartoonish antagonist who distracts from the overall sense of grounded believability. I appreciate why text and audio logs are used in games to give more direct information to the player, but there's something I respect even more so about a world that doesn't stop to explain itself just so the player feels their existence is acknowledged. Being an outsider makes my curiosity feel rewarded because I'm actively participating in piecing together my own understanding without a strictly definitive answer, thus sustaining a somewhat mysterious allure to it. I also admired the greater feeling of respite and decompression through irregular intervals that actually go a long way to humanize Isaac by allowing him to take a breather from the battle-hardened persona he's trying to uphold for the sake of his surviving team's morale. He's definitely a more emotionally vulnerable character in the remake, especially given the addition of using his sequel's voice actor Gunnar Wright to enrich his personality, along with Isaac's more pointed relationship with certain plot threads, besides simply searching for his estranged girlfriend Nicole. Now, it's easy to call Dead Space scary, but what elevates it is how it conditions you into the headspace of Isaac as he hesitantly swallows his fears and bats away panic to provide practical solutions to problems he can't just run away from. Furthering the Alien comparison, unlike most generic horror protagonists, Isaac is a notably intelligent and rational decision maker whose confidence under pressure demonstrates exactly why he's the most mature and qualified man for the job. The energy and weight conveyed in his actions as he wanders through dread-inducing corridors is modestly hesitant but forceful in a way that feels like he's fighting through his flight response. It further plays into the viciously messy nature of combat, as trying to line up a shot to dismember a limb requires you to maintain genuine composure under stressful circumstances. As a nasty, pus-filled odyssey through biological gooiness and hazardous mechanical confinement in a setting that eerily begins to feel like a monster itself, what makes Dead Space stand apart from most other survival horrors is its aggressively confrontational style of danger. The escalating devastation inherently urged me to move faster by design, thus making my sustained anxiety and lessened observation a part of the unpredictability. Given the limited time I have to play games these days, it takes the best of both worlds between Resident Evil 7 and 8, where the intense claustrophobia is matched with an alarming enemy count that you have no choice but to stand up to. I think this is what the Callisto Protocol was earnestly attempting to recreate by reducing the focus on guns in favour of a melee combat system that forced you into uncomfortably close combat, which, to be honest, I would rather take over the utterly tedious trend that we once had of being made defenseless and having to run and hide everywhere. In some respects, that style of close quarters brutality spawned from Rockstar's Manhunt and Monolith's Condemned, before later receiving somewhat of a revival in The Last of Us, which I really enjoyed. However, the fact Dead Space maintains the same harrowing effect exclusively using projectile weapons that don't necessarily require you to be in the enemy's face all the time speaks volumes for its thoughtful design. I guess you could say weapon accuracy is more precious than resource management, with stopping power being your best mate and suppressing the ever-surmounting threats as quickly as possible, especially the big lads who just bulldoze their way towards you with unflinching determination. It seems everyone fears the regenerating hunters, but it was personally the bloater-looking ones that honestly overwhelmed me the most, not so much because I wanted to avoid popping their massive blister filled with sucky leech babies, it's just the unnerving speed at which they storm towards you. In fact, for the more niche horror fans out there, it greatly reminded me of the big-looking fellas in Ghost Hunter, which were common enemies despite their intimidating design. Same goes for those cat-like tentacle shooters and the golden retriever type enemies that always look overly happy to see you with a giant fatal hug that both prove a massive pain in the hole in zero gravity. In terms of just sheer raw terror, the two most palpably off-putting enemies are the ones lifted straight out of John Carpenter's The Thing, which fall apart into different spider-like limbs that take a surprising amount of firepower to put down, and the wall-screaming parasite-looking things that forever distress me because they actively seem like they're keeping their host alive in unimaginable pain. So with all that said, I feel I've given you enough of an impression as to why I think Dead Space is so endlessly replayable. Gritty, gratifying action horror games seem to have more staying power for me personally than traditional hide-and-go-seek horrors where you can practically break its design by simply bolting past enemies. In Dead Space, there literally is no escape. You just gotta hit your fears with everything you've got, and try not to be like me, where I honestly forgot you could use stasis on enemies. Yeah, that would have made certain situations a hell of a lot more manageable.